These stories are taken from the book Heroes of Sodor. Edward the Really Useful Engine. After his exploits while pulling the visitor's train, Edward was sent to the works to have his side rods put back on and his frames mended. Boko takes charge of the branch line alongside Bill and Ben, Donald and Douglas. When Edward came back from the works, he felt like a different engine. When Edward was not hauling trucks and coaches, he is very good at being a back engine. When engines have heavy loads, Edward buffers up behind and helps push. The engines were grateful with him and respected him after his earlier exploits. Even Henry and James appreciated him, but as ever, Gordon was the last to appreciate him. He still had second thoughts about Edward. Edward is a useless old steam pot, Gordon sniffed. He should be retired. But he doesn't have tires, Percy said. Retired, said Thomas, means taken out of service, and not a moment too soon after his exploits. It should have finished him off in the first place. The other engines ignored him, including Henry and James. Percy was very upset. Later, his driver asked him why he looked so glum. Percy told him about Edward. Gordon doesn't think he's useful anymore, he said. Percy's driver saw the Fat Controller and told him what Percy had said. I will attend to the matter immediately. The Fat Controller had a plan. The new extension to the Norby branch line has been completed, he said to Edward. I want you to teach Arthur how to pull passengers. Yes, sir, but who's going to look after the trains here? Duck will do your work, Edward, the Fat Controller replied. Gordon made a stopover at Wellswood to have a drink. He was surprised to see Duck at the yards. What are you doing here? He asked. I'm taking over Edward's duties, and I will be assisting any engine who needs a push from behind, said Duck. It makes no difference to me, said Gordon pompously. I don't need a back engine. And he wheezed away. Edward enjoyed working with Arthur. It was great fun delivering passengers to stations in the beautiful countryside. Later on, Duck was not happy. The trucks were playing their silly games. Duck should play with other ducks cause he's no good at pulling trucks. Quack, 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 quack. Hold back, they giggled. Duck found himself going slower and slower. Halfway up Gordon's Hill, his wheels stopped altogether. Duck was stuck. Oh no, said his driver. This is the express line. Duck's guard phoned the signalman to warn him. It's too late to switch Gordon to the middle line, said the signalman. You had to flag him down. Gordon saw the guard. If I stop on this hill, I'll never get started again, he said crossly, and he buffeted up to Duck. Gordon tried to set off again, but his wheels spun and spun. It's no use. We need a back engine, said the driver. Gordon was cross. Fortunate enough, Edward was heading back home. He was surprised to see a man waving him down. Gordon and Duck are stuck on the hill. Would you go and help him push, please? Of course, said Edward. Edward was excited. He was going to be the back engine for 2 trains. Edward cheerfully buffeted up and the strange train set off. They chuffed gently into the station. Look at that, laughed a boy. The back engine must be the strongest and the best. Gordon was embarrassed. The Fat Controller spoke severely to Gordon. You had said rude things about Edward, he said. He proved today that he is useful, reliable, and very helpful. Gordon felt very ashamed. The next morning, Gordon apologized. Thank you for helping me, Edward, puffed Gordon. You really are a useful engine, even after you are getting old. Especially your determination after your exploits with the visitors' train. Thank you, Gordon. It's nice hearing from you, Edward chuffed happily. The Fat Controller's plan had worked. There was no more talk about Edward retiring. Bad day at Castle Lock. One day, the Fat Controller called Donald and Douglas to the docks. Lord Callan's castle is finally reopened. There is to be a grand celebration tomorrow. I need you to take the banners, bunting, and bagpipes to the castle. Harvey, you must load them straight away. Yes, sir, Chuff Harvey. The twins were excited. Going to Lord Callan's castle would be like going home again. Soon Harvey had finished loading the trucks. Where are you going? Asked Boko. Lord Callan's castle, Donald proudly announced. By Castle Lock, said Harvey. I'm glad I'm not going to Castle Lock, said Boko nervously. Scared the monster might get ya? Teased Douglas. He might, said Donald. There's no monster. There is two, there is not. It's two, it's not, it's two. Come on, you two. Stop arguing, bellowed Cranky. You got work to do. Donald and Douglas quickly left Brendan Docks. Lord Callan's castle is in Misty Valley. The twins were determined to get the important goods to the castle in time. They puffed proudly around the log towards their destination. There it is, cried Donald. We're almost there, shouted Douglas. But there was trouble ahead. Trees had fallen across the line. Donald and Douglas stopped just in time. Then suddenly, there was a loud crash. The brake van had been hit by a landslide and come off the rails. They were stuck. We could take the causeway, said Donald's driver. Douglas's driver knew that the causeway was old and rickety. It's too dangerous, he said. The twins were worried. We'll never get to the castle now, chuffed Donald. I'll call for help, said Douglas's driver. Splendid outfit, sir, said Taylor. The Fat Controller was trying on his present from Lord Callan when he heard the news. Donald and Douglas trapped by the lock. I'll send help as soon as I can, he said. But the hours passed. It grew dark and cold, and still no help had come. Suddenly, the twins spotted something strange through the mist. What's that? Called Donald. Is it the monster? Cried Douglas. For sure it is, answered Donald. It's not a monster. It's us. It was Harvey and the breakdown train. Donald and Douglas were relieved. By morning, the lines were cleared. The twins hurried off to the castle. Lord Callan's workers were waiting to unload the trucks. Soon the castle was decorated. The grand opening was a great success. Lord Callan was pleased. Aye, a splendid pair of engines. And very useful, added the Fat Controller. Aye, agreed the twins. The Fogman. It was winter on the island of Sodor. The first fogs had begun to roll in from the sea. Thomas, Annie, and Clover loved the quiet of Misty Valley, located near the junction. But Thomas must be careful of rocks that sometimes roll onto the tracks. Cyril the Fogman has a very important job. He puts detonators on the tracks to warn the engines when there's fog ahead. Boom! Ooh! Shivered Thomas as he ran over the detonator. That made my axles tingle. Cyril's done his job, said his driver. We better slow down. There's fog ahead. Thank you, Cyril, said Thomas. That night at the sheds, the Fat Controller had something special to show the engines. It was very large and strange looking. What is it? Asked Percy. It's a new invention, a railway foghorn, said the Fat Controller. It warns you when there's fog ahead, like this. The foghorn begins to wail, and roof tiles fall down onto the floor. Then it's turned off. That's loud, said Percy. Too loud, huffed James. Sounds like a tugboat to me, grumbled Gordon. Thomas looked worried. What would Cyril do now? He asked. He would be getting a much-needed rest. Besides, this new foghorn will be more reliable, said the Fat Controller. Poor Cyril, whispered Thomas. He's been scrapped. The next day, Percy was cheerfully chuffing through Misty Valley when suddenly the foghorn wails again. Oh, bother, exclaimed Percy. That foghorn is so loud it rattles my dome, and it doesn't even make my axles tingle. Still, we better slow down, said his driver. There's fog ahead. The foghorn had been so loud that it made the hillside shake. No sooner was Percy out of sight, when one rock fell, then another, and another. Before long, the track was blocked, and the foghorn was crushed. Not far away, Thomas was puffing happily right on time. I can't see a thing, said Thomas. And then before he could think of anything else, Thomas hits the landslide and derails. Bust my buffers! What happened to the foghorn? I don't know, said his driver, but at least nobody's been hurt. Toby will be coming down the line any minute, said his fireman. If there's no foghorn warning, said Thomas, he'll run into us. Leave it to me, called a voice from the fog. It's Cyril, said Thomas. I hope he's in time. Toby and his coach Henrietta were chuffing along. He was looking forward to a well-earned drink at the next station when, boom! Fog detonators, puffed Toby. There must be fog ahead, said his driver. We better slow down. And just around the next bend, with his axles still tingling, Toby was very glad they did. Otherwise, they would have crashed into Thomas's wreck. Soon the tracks were cleared and Thomas was back on the rails. If it hadn't been for Cyril, said Thomas, Toby might have had a worse accident than me. Instead of replacing Cyril with the foghorn, said the Fat Controller, we will replace the foghorn with Cyril. You are clearly more reliable. Thank you, sir, said Cyril. And thank you, said Toby. New inventions are all very well, said Thomas. But they don't make my axles tingle, said Percy. Toby had a little lamb. Bitter cold, bitter cold, bitter cold, chuffed Toby as he chuffed down the line with the cold wind blowing around him. Still, I'll soon be back in my nice dry shed. But suddenly, he could see Farmer McColl standing knee-deep in snow. He was waving a red flag. Toby's driver applied the brakes. My phone lines are down, all the roads are blocked, and my sheep had just started lambing, Farmer McColl said. They're trapped on the hillsides, cut off by the snow. What can we do to help? Toby chuffed. I need a vet as quickly as possible. We'll stop at the next signal box, said Toby's driver. I'll phone the vet from there. Toby raced to the signal box and the driver phoned ahead to the station. The Fat Controller and the vet were waiting for Toby as he arrived. Farmer McColl's lambs are stranded on the hillside, cried Toby. We got to rescue them. So we shall, said the Fat Controller. I'll send Duck right away. This is a job for an engine with a snowplow. Toby knew Duck was the right engine for the job. He was very powerful. Hurry, Toby called anxiously as Duck chuffed out of the station. But so much snow had fallen, the tracks ahead were blocked. We can't go on, said Duck's driver grimly. We'll have to go back. Toby was surprised to see Duck return to the station. I tried my hardest, puffed Duck, but the weather's getting worse. Even Duck's snowplow can't get through, said his driver. We need to find another way around. Then Toby had an idea. Then Toby remembered something. Why not the old loop line? It's still connected to the branch line, right? Yes, but no one's been down that line in years, said the Fat Controller. But it's our only chance to help the lambs, said Toby. The Fat Controller agreed, but he told Toby to be very careful. Duck led the way, and Toby followed behind. Soon a blizzard was howling. Toby's driver was worried. We can make it through, called Toby. Soon they reached a section where there was no snow covering the track. You're on your own, Toby, said Duck. Good luck. Thank you, Duck, for clearing the snow for me, he said. But Toby had forgotten there was a section of track that goes around the hillside. Help! My wheels are wobbling, he cried. His driver fought for control as Toby struggled on. I got to reach the other side, gasped Toby. Those lambs need me. The farmer was waiting. It was very cold. Suddenly, a ghostly glowing eye shone through the snowstorm. It was Toby's headlamp. You made it, cried Farmer McColl. What a brave engine you are. The vet and the farmer went to find the lambs. But they soon returned. The lambs are safe and sound, Toby, said the vet, but we need a place now to keep the little ones warm. Toby smiled. I think you'll find Henrietta has plenty of room. Toby stayed for several days just to make sure the lambs were all right. Farmer McCall was very grateful. Thank you, Toby, he said. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you, said Toby. There's nothing I like better than helping out a friend in need.